Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Worldology, and basically, I have to talk to y'all about what's in the title, man. It, it's like it's like we all knew it was gonna happen, right? So, what I just said in my last live, you can check it out if you want to, and you know, videos back to back to back that I've made to say man, we're getting something good, but it looks like it's a little bit of a lot of stuff that they're working on right now, right? So Battlefield 6 is on the verge of, passing away if they don't get their act together. You know, of course, I'm gonna say this. Of course, the battle royale is a dumbass addition to the battlefield. It's like they're doing the 128 player thing all over again to mess up everything and slow every progress down. So, I'm gonna talk about this article. Everybody is going to read this article, needs to read this article. I'll link it down in the description if you want to read it or whatnot. It's a pretty long article. Everybody is devastated on what's going on. So it's basically what everybody said, but then a confirmation of the people who's actually working in there said what we're saying from the outside view, right? So a lot of people is talking about, man, we can't really work on the game. We need time off. The game probably can't be released, this year and whatnot and stuff. So, enough going off my dome. I'm gonna actually go off what the article says, right? So first, but I'm still going off the dome because I'm not looking at the article right now. But first, the release date. I'm gonna start with the release date. First, they're talking about releasing. They scrapped the March date, right? And now they're talking about May. So y'all remember when I said, right, that we're probably not going to get something on March or this year, obviously, and not even on March. Probably I said this in my exact words. It's probably going to be somewhere a little above March, and possibly a November release date, because these dudes up there are working on too many stuff. They working on too much stuff. First off, they're working on a diverse mechanic, movement style gameplay, and then they're working on a BR to have that style of gameplay in the game, and then they're working on premium. They're working on maps. They're working on everything. But then the main thing is the BR that doesn't need to be into the game. And then again, they're saying that they want 100 million players playing Battlefield. 100 million players. So with 100 million players to be able to play Battlefield, right? First, how can we even know how many people is playing Battlefield if we only had the Steam charts but don't have the actual game, to tell us how many people is playing or look at it, which is the server browser. Bro, nobody will not care about numbers if the numbers don't look numbery, you know, in the game. Basically, y'all in the top are looking at false numbers. The numbers going to get to the numbers and then it's going to stagnate and then y'all going to lose money again. It doesn't make any sense. So look, I'm saying I knew something like this was going to happen. It's very predictable. They're working on too much stuff, and too much stuff people like. First, the community is talking about stuff that doesn't matter for the game, like a barrel heating up like 3 magazines in, or nerf the movement with the movement is already like too mechanical to be removed. And then, like, what are we talking about in the community? Like, most of the community is saying that the game is looking good. I'm actually talking about the people who is want stuff removed that doesn't need to be removed, because then it makes the game go even slower. And that's why they're saying, look, the release might be in next year in May. It might be next year in May. So we honestly don't know what time the game will actually drop, or what time the game will be finished, and what not this and what not that. And then they're going for the second 2042 type of release date with the new Frostbite engine. I keep saying the new engine. It's been 6 years and they're still on the new engine, right? The new engine. 11 to 10 months, years that 2042 got released very early. I'm at 12-month year. No, the 6 to 12 months that it got an early release for 2042, and it ended up bad because we're on the same engine of 2042 that's currently new. Do y'all not understand that we're on a new engine? And y'all are keep working on something impossible to do. Why are y'all working on a BR with the new engine instead of working on the base game that the base players will play? It doesn't make sense. Look it up if y'all want to. Y'all can look up the Frostbite engine on Wikipedia, right? I'm going to help y'all with this. Frostbite on Wikipedia. Y'all can read it. And it will specifically state that after BF5, the new engine for 2042 is basically the same engine, but it's a new engine added onto it. So basically, we're on the same engine as 2042, right? We're on the same engine as 2042, and 2042 just got made 6 years ago, so it's currently still new. They're working on it right now on the next Battlefield, and and DICE is actively trying to work on something that's, they're trying to work on something bigger than what they can handle, because again with the article, right? You're saying, employees took 9 to 10 months off. They took a whole, a pregnancy month off. Isn't the pregnancy like 11 months? They took, they taking care of the babies inside, because they crying. They don't know how to do their job, and they're like, what's going on, So look, the thing is like, come on. What is the point of trying to go too far? Then the article is stating that Fortnite, if you have to bring Fortnite into the conversation to beat, then you are not Battlefield. Why are y'all trying to compete with Fortnite? Fortnite isn't even a game. It's a store. It's a store for skins. It's not a game. The game isn't a game. Fortnite's not a game, bro. And then Call of Duty, what are you copying Call of Duty for? They're dead. They're on the edge of the hospital bed as well. And they actually are pulling their own plug right now. And DICE is trying to do the same thing for no exact reason. Just for numbers that's basically false and will actually turn down in an instant. You'd be like, oh, these numbers is looking really high. And then once that game comes out and gets that 2042 release, oh, we just got to work on these bugs. We got to work. Yeah, they know that money is losing very quick, losing rapidly. Because yeah, you can have the purchase, but the purchase only goes so far. Literally, the purchase only goes so far in the game industry, right? So, all right. So the thing is, right, is that I've been seeing, and obviously we already know, like the building slowly, right? Talking about building slowly. They released Need for Speed, right? Need for Speed Unbound. That doesn't relate to this, to Battlefield, right? But I'm gonna say something. Need for Speed Unbound was very bad, and they saying that they're going to try to release a new one, right? And the new release, they scrapped it for working on Battlefield. Battlefront 3, everybody is advocating for, Battlefront 2, to have Battlefield 3 release, Battlefront 3 release, Star Wars, right? It's like, can y'all not tell, like, the main source right now is Battlefield. Nobody can scrap Battlefront. Nobody can scrap Battlefield just to work on Battlefront. Battlefront needs its time to get worked on as well, because a lot is going on in that Star Wars, community and aspect of that. Need for Speed, you know, they haven't, broken down updates and stuff, and you know, I'm just talking on a grand scale of things, and I'm gonna get back into like the core of Battlefield, right? Well, actually, I'm gonna get to it right now. I already knew it was gonna be some low down type of, we can't get no release on March because y'all are working on too much stuff to even be worked on. Like, yes, we can advocate for a battle royale, but it was a mistake on the first place of introducing the battle royale. It's too much stuff to work on. First, you'll have to, you know, do spread patterns, mechanics for movement. What else? And maps. Have 64 player maps. You know, bring back premium to have, you know, more content in the game. You know, we do not need to worry about dog tags and all that other stuff like I, you know, said in my stream and whatnot and all that stuff. We don't need the extra, you know, game modes. We only need rush, breakthrough, conquest, domination, TDM. We only need those five. And then we can, you know, have some, you know, fun game modes like, you know, the game mode in the background that's playing, Blood Money. Blood Money, you take the, well, not Blood Money. This is domination, but you know, other game modes like Hardline, Blood Money, or you know, Heist. You know, to capture, you know, an enemy's objective. But for Battlefield 6, like capture enemies, you know, hostage or something, or you know, what do they do, like capture enemies hostage, or enemies like, you know, weapon crate or something like that, right? They said they was gonna do something like that anyway. But anyways, it's like we need we're getting something good, but it's also like we're probably not going to get much content for the game. Like that's what I think. I don't know it, but I think like the content probably isn't going to be on the level of BF4, like or even BF Hardline or BF3. It's not going to be on that level. They have more content than 2042. Yes, they have 52 weapons already in the making. But that's only a, you know, a little bit of content wise. Because Delta Force, right? They have the same thing going. They have like 100 weapons, but then guess what's going on? They have laser beam aim. Then they have only 2 or 3 maps. And what's going on with Battlefield? They're going through the same cycle. So it's like, but the thing is, we already know that there's 3 new maps for the next Battlefield. And I keep saying and advocating, the only way they can make at least 20 maps or 30 maps into the next Battlefield, they have to reuse things. There's no possible way that they can, you know, bring new maps into the game. There's no way they're going to make 20 maps, 20 new maps, 15 new maps, not even 5 new maps for the next game. If they're talking about laying off people for 9 months, it's impossible. They're going to have to incorporate, you know, new legacy maps from all eras of Battlefield. Especially if they're doing a BR map, they have to do it. They have to. I'm saying they have to, not they need and have to, not want, not whatever, not want, but they need and have to. That's the only 2 options for this. Because it's like, look, if we're looking at a May release for next year, again, if we're looking at a May release, then that means that they're still working on something. And like I said, they're probably working on premium, right? They're possibly working on premium. They're working on premium right now, actually, because they have 52 weapons now. In the first leak, the first alpha test, it was 40 something weapons, but they're not in the new, alpha test that's right now. That's going on right now. They're not in there. They're not going to come in the base game. So look, they're working on too much stuff. They're working on premium, then a BR, then maps, then mechanics for the new BF game, and then details with, you know, the barrel overheating. And I said in my stream, like, bro, we're talking about the barrel overheating in Battlefield. Bro, nobody cares about that. That was in the first playtest, and nobody was saying nothing about it. And then now it's brought up. Bro, that doesn't matter. The whole game is in a wheelchair right now. What we need to advocate for is not details or atmospheric, you know, tendencies for the game. We need, first off, we actually need to worry about, you know, the bugs in the game. Because if they saying that we don't know when the game is going to release, they need to worry about the bugs first. They're doing that. They're doing that for the next game. And second, they need to worry about the gameplay. The gameplay looks decent for the leaks, right? But then they need to worry about the maps. They have three good looking maps. They have three good maps, right? But then what would the other maps be? Like obviously we're not gonna see all the maps that's in the game. But what wasn't it in like 2042? We seen like majority of the maps like that was in the trailer, and then like it came out and it was actually that much, that many maps. It was like five maps in the game. So it was like they need to bring back legacy maps. They need to reuse legacy maps. That's the only possible way they can do this. If they reuse legacy maps, then they can have time to work on the general scheme of, Battlefield, because maps and weapons are the two main things for the game, right? At the moment, because the details and the way the game plays is all right. The spread, right? Yes, it still has a laser beam spread type of gameplay, gunplay, right? But it's different. It still has optic sway, like as it should, because that means you have to control your weapon, able to control your weapon, and everything like that, right? So then they talking about the campaign. I'm gonna be quick on this. The campaign. That's probably why they didn't make a 2042 campaign. They're doing too much. Like, why are you making a BR when you have to make a story? And then they're probably gonna make a story out of the specialist anyway. Like I can see it in due time. It might not happen, but they ain't made them characters for nothing. They have three gates. Again, they have three gates to make the game, you know, to make the game in its final form. To test, gate one is what they test, and gate two is what they test, and gate three is what they test. Right? Gate one. The teams must have a clear sense of what they want to make or some proof. Concept showing that this vision is achievable. So yeah, the first gate, is the most obvious, right? Teamwork, right? But then majority of the people that's working in the actual, development team, which is the main reason why Marcus Leto, right? His ass left and then he came back, and he probably might leave again because people, again, it's stated, the guy who made the article, he went and talked to the people. He said that, hello, Yak with the gun, hello. But he said, well, a lot of people said that people wasn't listening. They're listening, but they're not actively listening. They're not actually listening. They're just hearing the people. They're not listening. So, gate two, they're building out and testing key technology at some scale if it can work at scale. So they're testing technology with multiple things: campaign, BR, base game, and everything around it, right? And y'all can see like what I said in the beginning, how that could end up. And gate three signifies full production, right? Expected to pass gate three in early 2023, but it was significantly delayed. When it did pass, some on the ground questioned whether it should have, right? When it did pass, some on the ground questioned whether it should have. What are you talking about? So you're saying like we're still at gate one or something? Like, well, we're still at gate one because most of the article was people not listening. we're we're, we're still at gate one. Gate two, yeah, yeah, they're doing gate two. But for the teamwork scale to make it full production, to make it fully developed, they're still at gate one. They're not at terms with, working on gate two together to get to the development. So my whole thing, right, is that we have 6 years in development. They're working on Need for Speed. They're working on some other game, Madden. Right, that game comes out every year like Call of Duty. So it's like, look, if if Dice was working, Dice was working on, and it's not like a whole like, you know, shot at all the developers. There's actually developers that, are doing what, the community wants them to do and wants the whole community to do, like to make the game better so the game won't die. And then, yep, I'm serious. If Battlefield's franchise go to waste, EA is going to go to waste. Nobody is playing Madden. Nobody is playing, Need for Speed right now. Nobody, and the only thing they can do is go for Battlefront 3. And then Battlefront 3 will probably take 15 years. And then they'll rush it out in 3. And then the game is going to turn out like, Battlefront 2. Most of the people on gaming plays FPS. Most. I'm not going to say all, but most. And then like the RPG games and all that, right? But most of the people play FPS. And then when FPS's only hope is Battlefield, because Battlefield looks very technical right now and it looks very polished right now. And then when it comes out and it has no content and the game is like 2042 and we have the same, history of how everybody's seen 2042 had on their release, then yeah, EA is going to go out of business. Them numbers isn't going to matter. I'm telling you, like it's not a whole hate or a whole shot. It's just like, what are y'all doing? Y'all are listening to numbers, which the people are the numbers. The numbers making numbers. So skepticism. A lot of developers think that the game what should not be in its current state right now. It should be watched upon and looked at with a very serious manner because it probably could not be in a state to be released. And for that, what I just said, it's a lot of the higher ups that wasn't listening. They wasn't listening. They was only hearing, and they wasn't incorporating things that's innate supposed to be in the game for a better sense of the game. For the community that's going to play the game, right? So that's the whole sense of that topic. So, and what I just said, right? This next one is the most expensive Battlefield title. Hear me again. The most expensive Battlefield title. So that means if they fail, that budget is going to waste 400 million back in early 2023. So if they fail again, if they fail, this game dies and EA is going to crumble. Mainly EA, because DICE is actually trying to do something. But EA is going to crumble. They have Criterion, Ridgeline, DICE, EA. Who else? Multiple people working on this game. Do I have to lie? I might be wrong. Like, bro, what you want to compete with Fortnite and Call of Duty for? So I'm going backwards to up, right? Because there's like a lot of things that I want to get off my chest, right? So they saying don't repeat past mistakes, but the mistakes is repeating right now. What did they do with Battlefield 5? They worked on a BR that didn't really need to be in the game at that moment. They could have just worked on the base form and then work on the Warzone after. That's what they could have did. But then they wanted to release it at the same time as the base game. Like that was gonna do some more numbers for the game. Bro, you can't divide, player bases like that. Especially when both games aren't finished and one game isn't paid attention to. And then 2042 had the same thing with Portal. They got rid of, the server browser just for a portal or something. But it is a server browser, but it's not because you're not really server browsing. You're just looking at servers for XP grinds. The aim trainers are nice. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So I'm quiet because, I'm going in live time with y'all. I'm going in live time with recording and with my live, right? So, because I'm going to be real. I'm not going to be like a false person who's actually doing nothing and trying to, make the game better, right? So the next thing is working smarter, not harder. I didn't see this. I probably got stuck on the thing that I wasn't able to see. But I'm gonna just go off the dome with this. Working smarter, not harder. Accurate data about where the team is at, but it also means having a willingness to give their people more time, provided the capital is able to do so. Giving people what they need to do their job sounds like a simple solution to a complex problem, but it was at the heart of every conversation I had about Glacier. Most EA developers, including leaders, who are beholden to lofty targets, want to make a great game. At the end of the day, they're all really good people and they work really hard and they really want to deliver a good product for their customer. One former EA developer assured me as we ended our call. As for making the necessary shifts towards sustainability in the industry, it's kind of in the best interest of making the best possible game for gamers. Explain another. I hope to God that they still achieve what they need to achieve within the timelines that they have for the sake of Battlefield as a game to actually meet the expectations of the gamers for people to maintain their jobs. And that's me quoting in the last quote, or all of us anyway. We all, said that in our hearts and souls and minds, right? So thinking of that, working smarter isn't taking 9 to 10 months off, but that that is working smarter, right? It is working smarter if the people who I'm assuming the people who took those 9 to 10 months off, they actually had something to say, or it was probably those people who's like, oh, I think we need to actually look at this game and actually listen and do what we need to do that the community is telling us to do, right? I think those are the people who's taking those month breaks off. So it's like, is it the people who is taking a 9 month break off, or should they actually take the 9 month breaks off, and then them that's advocating for it have the other people to put the stuff that the 9 month the people who was taking those breaks are telling them to do, so then when the people come back, then they can work on it more efficiently. But not a perfect world and stuff like that, such and such and such, and this and that and that, right? And they said not working smarter, not harder, and then they're trying to work on three major things at once. A BR that they only did once at that, and they never built on it since now. Call of Duty built on their Warzone from scratch. They built on it. They created it and then they built on it. And then what else? What else I said they was working on? Something that doesn't pertain to the game. Oh well, campaign. It pertains to the game, but then a campaign comes out of nowhere, acting like a Civil War, the Civil War movie, right? Never watched it. Heard it was good, but then they make that, and it looks good, but it's not polished, right? So they have to work on that while working on the multiplayer. But then they have to make a story. And then who knows the story mode will be? Who knows if they will implement the specialists to put in a story mode? And I think that will actually happen. Can't you tell me that? Can you tell me a night it's not gonna be now? So it's just like, man, it's a lot going on for the next Battlefield. They're competing with numbers again. They're competing with numbers that doesn't make numbers, but the numbers is actually telling the numbers to make them more numbers. If you go, I mean, the numbers is telling the people who want to make numbers to do these numbers so they can make more numbers. Make these changes so they can make more numbers. That's all we were advocating for. And to do something better to make, this type of thing, better. So that's just, the general sense of, this type of, video, right? It's not a video to, scare anything about Battlefield. It's just, something to put Battlefield on, the map that even though the game is doing very well, there's a lot of things that, we should actually, think about and be a little skeptical and nervous about, right? The game is good, but the content and, the live service might be back in the game. The premium, they might add both live service and premium to make the job even harder. Like they might do a lot of things. They're already doing a lot of things for the game. So it's just they're doing multiple things, but are constantly not focusing on what the 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 current FPS, community want. Not just the Battlefield community, but the FPS community. Scrap Call of Duty versus Battlefield. Scrap that. But the main thing about FPS is people want a good FPS game to make, content on, to make the game, you know, fun to play for people that is casuals and people who are competitive and people who want to go pro in their future times of, the esports. And if, spectator mode gets into, the next Battlefield with server browser, then they can make their own, stuff like that. And it's just like, come on, y'all are doing very good, but this article just came out of nowhere. It just came out of nowhere, and it's like, should we be angry? Should we be nervous? Should we be scared? Should we be worried? Should we be happy that the release isn't going to come out, next March, or should we be actually nervous at the, actually, yeah, nervous that the next release is going to come out next year? Did I say next month when I said that? Next year in March, or waiting until May. But right now, I'm still advocating. I'm still thinking on the November release. Um, is probably a failed prediction, and I don't even care about predicting it because they're DICE will release the game. EA will release the game whenever they want it to be released, and it's just it's not really a good thing to have this type of article come out, especially when we all see how good the leaks are, and then we are like taking a step back and like, are these leaks really the leaks that are happening? Because a lot of people did not get into Battlefield Labs, but they're still leaking it around somewhere. So it's like, is this actually happening in the game in due time, or is it just a false bit of currency for the game? Like, is it it's just going to have the same 2042 release? Because again, the community isn't going to forget bad releases on bad releases. That's all I'm gonna say is that where people isn't going to forget. So that's all I'm gonna say for this video. I hope you like, share, and subscribe. And bruh, I hope you like, share, and subscribe, and comment if you want to, and just have a good sense of a brain to have a topic of idea to express yourself. Like get angry if you want. Do what you got to do. So it's just so get this off because we need them to listen. This is the last Battlefield, the most expensive, 400 million, and if they fail, then they're probably gonna go bankrupt again. So yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe. Hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I'll come out y'all with a new video. My bad, a new video. So yeah, I'm out. Peace.